Let me welcome Aneesh Chopra. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I begin with a thank you to our host here at the World Bank for inviting me to participate in this session. It is a humbling opportunity in that all of you are experts in the field of disaster and risk management. That is not my specialty, but I come to you with just a few words of how our strategy for American innovation might help to unlock some of the value you will be tasked with finding over the course of these next few days. Let me begin just briefly with the culture gap that we see in the public sector. For those of us here in the United States, at least in the United States, perhaps a similar scenario around the world, our social norms, the cultural norms of the world we're in today are much more akin to the phrase, there's an app for that. As consumers in the American economy, and I would presume in the global economy, we're increasingly interested in these emerging technologies. Having come into the public sector, we still have a bit of a culture, as my colleague Kate Stanton says from the State Department, of being in a world where there's a form for that. And in fact, as I came from the Commonwealth of Virginia, we had countless examples of buildings that literally fire marshals were asked to come in and evaluate because of the breadth by which they had been storing just reams and reams of paper. And in fact, I have a picture of an operating file cave in the mountains of Pennsylvania where we store all of our personnel records. And if you take a look at this, you couldn't imagine that this is 2010. Last September, the President unveiled a strategy for American innovation that has three key pillars. I believe there are insights from these pillars that relate to the work you will be engaged in over the next couple of days. The first of those pillars is that we are at our best when we invest in the building blocks of innovation. And in our country, that is really three things: our research and development capacity, our quality of our workforce, and ensuring we have an information technology infrastructure that can achieve all the growth goals of the nation. Here I'll highlight more specifically the work around research and development in modeling and simulation. You know, it's amazing to me as I think about the theme, the work around disaster management. High-performance computing is today a luxury only the few understand. There are not many assets in the world that can take advantage of all the computing capacity. You saw in the news just recently China has strengthened its capacity in high-performance computing. Our federal labs are experts in the use of high-performance computing in some very sophisticated modeling exercises, whether it be understanding climate change or thinking about some of our energy posture more broadly. These capabilities, however, aren't in the hands of everyday Americans or entrepreneurs. And you ask the question from an R&D perspective, from an innovation perspective, to what extent might high-performance computing be an asset that could be leveraged in the field of disaster risk management, to the extent that we have ever-increasing sources of information that we want to analyze. Many of you may have access to tools, and others would like to have access to tools that aren't yet available. The second pillar of innovation, the pillar that's probably most relevant for this conference, is the pillar around creating an open and competitive market environment. And more specifically, the task that the President asked of me in the first day he took office was to ensure that we have a culture in Washington that's one of more openness and transparency. Open and effective government is this key aspect of what we consider to be our role in ensuring competitive markets, at least the technological role. There are obviously a lot of roles on competition policy and a number of other areas. In open government, we have come to learn a few basic facts that I believe have impact on a whole range of activities. The first basic presumption is that, as the President often says, Washington doesn't have a monopoly of great ideas, as it might be the case from wherever your home countries might be. In this case, the President speaks to the notion that knowledge is widely dispersed. Knowledge is widely dispersed. So our challenge is how to capture that knowledge and to bring it into our operating environment, where in the past that might be an impossible task because you have to staff up resources to go find that knowledge, regional offices, local offices, go find people who know the answers to your problems. But in today's Web 2.0 powered environment, it is a lot easier for us to capture that knowledge and to thoughtfully bring it in. The second fact that we've come to learn, and one that we think is important to our mission, as Justice Brandeis had said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. How might we release more information so that others could help us ensure, in our case, that taxpayer dollars are spent well, or more broadly, that those who are in positions where there may be risks to the society at large, that their information is made more transparent as well. Cass Sunstein, my colleague and our expert on matters regulation, often cites the great work that's been done in creating transparency around toxic chemicals inventories and the like. That transparency has actually created a market environment where actually organizations work to break down some of those risks. A similar opportunity has come out of our Labor Department. Publishing our fatality statistics for workplace environments has had such an incredible effect because no employer wants to be on that most troubled list. So sunlight is the best disinfectant, another key attribute of our open government framework. And third, perhaps most interesting in the context of the challenges that we confront today, not only as a nation but around the world, that we can't do it by ourselves. The third notion is that we have to have an all-hands-on-deck approach. And an all-hands-on-deck approach means, for many of us, ceding some control for the end experience in order to tap into people who can help us execute the path. Many of you recall our response to the H1N1 challenge earlier in 2009. Well, one of the interesting challenges from our perspective was that we didn't have in place a formalized biosurveillance system in every emergency room in the American hospital system. We had launched after 9/11 a program to organize the data collection efforts, but maybe 8, 9, 10% of the nation's hospitals were plugging in. It's a bit of a quandary. If it's taken you 8 years to get to 8, 9, 10%, and you're an immediate challenge to capture the information from emergency rooms to understand the magnitude of the challenges on H1N1, you're not going to scale up in weeks the other 90%. It's just not feasible. In the spirit of open government, in the spirit of all hands on deck, the United States Centers for Disease Control collaborated with the International Society for Disease Surveillance and launched ISDSdistribute.org. Very simple, lightweight web platform where local communities could register summary counts of the percentage of emergency room visits that were related to flu-like illness. Very simple. You didn't have to have a PhD in physics. You didn't have to have sophisticated software. And wouldn't you know it, by the end of the year, we had, I think, don't have the exact figures, I think 60 or 70% of the population in the United States in communities where information was now shared. And oh, by the way, we had that information published on that website, ISDSdistribute.org, so that information can be made available not only to the policymakers in public health, but to anybody. And you can see trends city to city and so forth. And our last pillar of innovation is on certain topics. The President has said that we need an all-hands-on-deck approach in the sense of catalyzing breakthroughs, not just in the spirit of open government, but actually trying to find a way to unleash a clean energy revolution or thinking about ways we can improve healthcare quality and lower costs at the same time. Tackling some of those more challenging scientific and technological issues that confront our society. And I'll end with this final observation in that area, an area that has been of minds for a number of folks, and that is in the area of cybersecurity. It's an interesting question from a risk management standpoint. What are the game-changing strategies to address the issue of cybersecurity as more and more of our lives are online? We're in the middle of an open process that Howard Schmidt, the President's cybersecurity coordinator, and I announced maybe 2-3 weeks ago, calling for input on game-changing ideas to our approach on cybersecurity, available at www.nitrd.gov. And we asked specifically about how might we create an insurance market to price the risk of a cybersecurity attack. Because today we don't have a really working, functioning market mechanism that understands this threat and can mitigate it through these traditional means. So we've asked for your input. As experts gathering here over the next few days, many of you might be thinking about this topic, and we welcome your feedback in the spirit of open government. But it ends with this final observation as I share with you this overall strategy. It's the story of how we put all of this together in DARPA. A story that happened last fall when we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the birth of the Internet. DARPA, in celebration of this milestone, called for a very interesting networking challenge. Not knowing how any of this would work, they asked a very simple proposition. On December 5th, we're going to launch 10 red balloons anywhere in the continental United States. They're going to go up in the morning, and they're going to come down by the sunset. The first team who can accurately report the latitude and longitude for those 10 balloons will win a whopping $40,000 prize. And the presumption was you'd have to take advantage of new media, social media, Web 2.0, in order to assemble the team and execute this very difficult task. A phone tree to find balloons probably ain't going to happen. Well, the winning team from MIT had two very interesting observations. Observation one, they were able to build a team within 48 hours of, not they were procrastinating, but they basically did it 2 days before the launch. They assembled the team, and they got 5,000 folks to join their team in 48 hours. But the second part was how they turned that team into an energy, using its energy for change. What the MIT team did is they created this incentive system where the person who found the balloon would get paid 50% of the fair market value of that balloon, $2,000. But the person who invited the person who found the balloon into the network was paid $1,000. And the person who invited the person who invited the person who found the balloon was paid $500, and then $250. And through this incentive system, they were able to tap in over 2 million people through networks, Facebook and Twitter and others, to build this army that would go out and find those 10 balloons. And they accomplished the task in 9 hours. The lead MIT researcher who put this program together, a postdoc, by the way, has now turned his thinking with partnerships at the UN to use the same incentive structure to empower people to go after the billion hungry souls in our world who live on very, very modest means. Using the learning of this networking challenge into a new platform for electronic democracy. And the technology and the philosophy has also been used in new mobile platforms for basically remote jobs that can be done in rural Africa, basically remote sensing jobs. So if you want to find data, you can pay people with their cell phones to come back and report out that information. You have a tiered system for doing so. That entrepreneurial spirit is what we are trying to tap into in this overall strategy for American innovation. Building blocks, an open government focused on competitive open markets, catalyzing these breakthroughs, and to do it in a way that people wouldn't know the answer going in because they're taking a little bit of risk. I wish you luck in this conference. Thank you for having me, and look forward to your next steps and follow on to my knighted request. Cheers.